Welcome to part 2 of the Cheri Jo Bates FBI 3227195 series. Today we are going to focus on the first 3 serials from the recent release, 24, 25 and 26. 24 and 26 deal with elimination print comparisons. The fingerprints and, where available, the palm prints of Cheri, her family, law enforcement officers and some suspects were compared to the latent finger and palm prints lifted from Cheri's VW Beetle and submitted to the FBI by Riverside Police Department. Serial 25 is a follow-up letter from RPD Chief of Police Curly Kincaid to the FBI featuring some inquiries about the work being done by the Identification Division's lab. I will endeavour to present the information objectively and as it appears on the surface. I'll also leave any subjective observations until the end of the video, where I'll present a summary of my own thoughts on particular aspects of these reports. So, without further ado, let's crack into this. Serial 24 contains 3 files, along with 2 pages of handwritten notes made by lab technicians, which contain some ambiguous fingerprint classification data. The murder of Cheri Josephine Bates occurred on the evening of October the 30th, 1966. Late on that afternoon, Cheri had left a note at home for her father Joseph, saying she had gone to the Riverside Community College library. She didn't return that evening, and when Joseph woke the next morning and she still had not come home, he reported her missing with Riverside Police Department at 5:43 a.m. At 6:30 a.m, her lifeless body was found by campus groundskeeper Cleophas Martin. On November 4th, Riverside Police Department sent a letter to the FBI along with 15 cards bearing 21 transparent lifts and 6 negatives. These print lifts were taken from the victim's car, a 1960 VW Beetle, which had apparently been tampered with by her attacker that evening. Also submitted were fingerprint cards for Cheri, for Riverside Police Department Officer Ken Edmondson, and for 3 other unidentified individuals. One of these unidentified persons also had palm prints included. While we don't have access to the original November 4th request, the FBI Identification Division's report dated November 15th, 1966 details all of the relevant information. Out of the 21 lifts and 6 negatives submitted, the FBI lab were able to determine that 7 latent fingerprints and 5 latent palm prints were of value, appearing in 10 lifts and in 4 negatives. The locations of these prints are as follows. The graphics will demonstrate the approximate location of each lift on the vehicle. 1 fingerprint on outside left door, upper centre. 1 fingerprint on right door window, upper right centre. 1 fingerprint on left rear bumper guard. 2 fingerprints on the glove box. 1 fingerprint on inside right door, leading edge of frame, also in a negative. 1 palm print on inside left door, upper centre. 1 palm print on outside right door, upper edge. 2 palm prints above right rear window. 1 palm print on negative number 1, location not specified. 1 fingerprint on negative number 2, location not specified. In comparisons done by the FBI Identification Division, it was found that the prints found on the lift marked outside left door upper centre were left there by victim Cheri Jo Bates. The remaining finger and palm prints did not match Cheri's or those of the other 4 individuals listed for comparison. They were added to the latent case file 73096. Bridging the original request from Serial 24 for elimination comparisons in early November and the late December comparisons which included Joseph Bates in Serial 26, Riverside PD Chief Curly Kincaid sent the FBI's Identification Division another letter on November 28, 1966. This letter featured several questions about the analysis that was being done by the FBI lab and some inquiries into how they might go about submitting requests for large quantities of suspects from specific demographics. This letter and consequent reply from the FBI lab is worth transcribing in full, as all of the detail is covered sufficiently.
Gentlemen, with reference to your communication of November 15th, 1966, the last paragraph states, "The fingerprints of Bates are being searched through our main fingerprint file. May we inquire as to what this particular search consists of? Also, did your previous comparison check of the latents go through your single fingerprint file? Third, did your previous comparison include any military personnel? We have the names of 154 military personnel at March Air Force Base who are possible suspects. If we forward their names and service numbers, could you possibly check the latents lifted from our vehicle against these military people? In the near future, we will also have several hundred fingerprint and palm print cards of local college people. If we send them to you, can you check these against our lifted latents and photographs? A prompt answer would be appreciated. Sincerely, L.T. Kincaid, Chief of Police."
With reference to your first question, our main fingerprint file contains the fingerprints of arrested persons. As you have been previously advised, no arrest record was located for the victim, Cheri Jo Bates. 5 of the 6 unidentified latent fingerprints reported in this case have been searched through our single fingerprint file, but no identifications were affected. Although the 6th unidentified latent fingerprint is of value for identification purposes, it lacks sufficient area and detail to warrant a search of that file. The fingerprints of military personnel are not contained in our single fingerprint file. Comparisons of the latent prints reported in this case will be made with the fingerprints of any suspects you name. When submitting names of servicemen for comparison with fingerprints in our files, you should include date and place of birth, as well as military serial number, to aid in locating fingerprint cards. Fingerprints and palm prints of large numbers of suspects, such as college students, will of course have to be handled on a deferred basis, commensurate with our workload. Prints of more logical suspects should be identified as such to ensure expedite handling.
Something to keep firmly in mind here is that back in 1966, locating and comparing fingerprints was a much more labour-intensive process than with today's heavily computerised systems. It wasn't quite as simple as loading dozens of names and numbers into a computer to have it spit out the results in next to no time. Non-expedited fingerprint checks could take weeks, sometimes months. It's a process, and even then there was no guarantee that the FBI had checked the correct suspect that had been requested. In fact, the Zodiac FBI files contain many examples where the FBI's Identification Division could not reassure the State Departments that they had actually checked the right individual. Often analysis conclusion reports would feature a caveat from the lab, stating that the listed person may or may not be the individual who was put forth for the comparison. I'll be making an in-depth video about the evolution and development of fingerprinting systems as part of the planned Zodiac 10042 latent file series. On December 23, 1966, Kincaid reached out again to the FBI's Identification Division with the fingerprints of Cheri's father, Joseph Bates. Also enclosed were the finger and palm prints of some suspects. One individual in particular had their fingerprints checked in the previous request outlined in Serial 24 and had their palm prints submitted for comparison here. Kincaid requested that all of these enclosures be checked against the remaining unidentified prints in the Riverside 73096 latent file. Two statements in particular stand out in this letter. Firstly, a comment on palm prints.
We feel that the palm prints being sent are very important to this case, especially those found on the right side of victim's vehicle, on or above right door.
Then a word about one of the suspects in the case.
Subject
redacted
has been a prime suspect in this case the past 3 weeks. The prints you find here were obtained from him in Louisiana.
After conducting analysis, the FBI reported on January 4, 1967, that Cheri's father, Joseph Bates, had matched 2 of the fingerprints and 2 of the palm prints in the 73096 latent file, the fingerprint on the left rear bumper guard. The fingerprint in negative number 2. The palm print from outside right door, upper edge. One of the palm prints above the right rear window. So after the eliminations and other comparisons, the 73096 latent file was left with 4 fingerprints and 3 palm prints still unidentified. This number was confirmed in other publicly available reports, including a 1974 request by Riverside Police Department to compare their 73096 latent file against the 10042 Zodiac latent file. So let's examine the names from the elimination checks requested in Serial 24. 2 of the 5, Cheri Jo Bates and Kenneth Eugene Edmondson, are known. 3 are not. Ken Edmondson is almost certainly the patrolman who found Cheri's car the morning her body was discovered. Initially, RPD were looking for a yellow car, and as Ken Maines explains in his video, once the correct description was established, Edmondson was quick to point out he'd seen Cheri's car already that morning.
Police are looking for a yellow VW Bug. The patrolman passes that car at the library on 2 different occasions. On the 3rd occasion, he runs into her friend named Cheri, who says, "No, she has a green VW." And he's like, "Oh, I saw that." He goes back up to the library. There it is. Now, being a very astute patrolman, he gets out and he's inspecting Cheri Jo Bates's vehicle. He realizes that it's cold, okay? Not just the hood. He reaches into the engine, or looks into the engine compartment, and he feels the exhaust pipes leaving the engine are cold. While he's doing that, he notices that the distributor wire is pulled from the distributor cap.
While Edmondson is not specifically named here, his inclusion in the elimination print process is highly insinuative of his presence at the crime scene under those circumstances. As for the 3 redacted names, we could make an educated guess on who they could possibly be, but using the less reliable source of a newspaper article rather than Mains's source of the Riverside police reports. In a Riverside Daily Press article dated October the 29th, 1968, it states that 4 fingerprints and 3 palm prints remain unidentified, which was true. They also mentioned that some of the prints were identified as those of Cheri, her father, her brother, a girlfriend, and a service station attendant that had worked on her car. According to the FBI reports, this is only partially true. They matched some of the prints to Cheri and to her father Joseph, but the FBI didn't get any matches to anyone else in their comparisons. So, although we can't be certain that these people are the ones involved in the initial elimination print checks, I think they at least do make for strong possible candidates. We do know for certain that after Joseph's finger and palm prints had been checked, there were 4 finger and 3 palm prints left unidentified. The Serial 25 question and answer dialogue between Curly Kincaid and the FBI lab brought up some interesting things, which I mostly covered during the video. I want to reinforce one of these points here via a statement made by Captain Irv Cross to Inland Empire magazine in 2010. Cross stated that he wished he could have done more to follow up on the military angle. The article suggests it would have been a monumental task, and it most certainly would have been. As I explained in the Serial 25 section of this video, back in the mid to late 1960s, fingerprint comparison was not a simple exercise, certainly not as streamlined as it is today. It would be tempting to suggest that everybody in the system has been checked against the unidentified latent prints in Riverside's 73096 file by now, but I don't think we can say that with any confidence, for reasons we will explore in the upcoming A10042 video series. That should cover things for now. Feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments. In the next episode, we're going to hop forward a few years to October 1969, where we will be exploring the latent print comparison made between the Riverside prints and the Napa County Sheriff Department's latent prints on file for the Lake Berryessa attack. Until then, best of wishes and have a good one.